I'm worried that no one will truly know me. After all, no one that really wants to know me is truly listening or watching. Even though I'm a best-selling author, this is the truth right now. So how does it feel for us all? How does it feel for you? And what is said in the research? I'm looking at it all now. My first thought on this is that who would come to my funeral right now? But I'm just surmising. Realistically, who would come to my funeral if I died right now? Well, I'd be there. But yeah, you sure would have, hopefully anyway, your intimate family members, or at least some of them. But would you have many others? I mean, I've been to funerals where they've been small and ones that were huge. I was to ones where there was just a handful of people, and I thought there would be more. And when I went, the people that were there, that were the mourners as such, were so amazed that someone like me would go. And I'm not talking because of any great things I've done, but because I wasn't directly related to them or directly very friendly with them. But I thought at the time, well, I need to go to that person's funeral. Or I thought at the time that one of the mourners was a good person or had some good impact on my life in some way, or was connected with good times, or we had a lot of people in common. And I thought it was the right thing to do at that time. And I'm sure you've been perhaps in the same way. But then when you go to a big funeral, I remember a big funeral once, it was the middle of the winter. It was obviously very dark, and wow, there was queues and queues and queues and queues and queues of people. And when I say queues of people, the person that died, funnily enough, wasn't extremely famous or anything like that. But there was somebody within their family that was well known and famous in their own right. Still not world famous or anything like that. Yet it brought home to me the ordinary neighbourhood, how big a funeral could be. And as I was standing in that queue for, I'm not joking, I'd say up to 2 hours. I had conversations with one or two, of course. But you couldn't help but wonder about funerals, about how a person's life could be impacting so many, how there is a chain reaction, and how this person, who wasn't very famous or well known in their own right, but had obviously an intimate family member who was well known in some regard, and to be honest, attracted quite a lot of the crowd, that how one person can be connected to another person, and how that can bring so much, such an outpouring of sympathy and sorrow. And then there's the timing element, isn't there? Midwinter, it was I think a weekend, just by chance, that was when the funeral was on. If it was midweek, would you have as many? Probably not. If it was earlier in the day, probably not. If it was summertime, all these different factors. But when you go to a short or small, very small funeral, and the person is or was impactful on you in some way, versus say big funeral where indirectly the person who passed away has had and drawn a big crowd like that, you start wondering about it all and everything else in between. Who will come to my funeral? Will there be a small crowd or a big crowd? And I believe right now there'll be a small crowd. But that's not to say, of course, that small crowd won't be a good crowd. But I believe that despite the fact that when I was young, and very young in fact, funerals were a huge big thing, traditionally, where I'm from. And in fact, I know one guy who his parents met at a funeral, believe it or not. He was an only child. And were it not for the death of somebody, they wouldn't have got together and he wouldn't be born. So funerals were a huge social occasion. But I've seen the difference in them, small or big, over the years, the change. And one conversation I had with a funeral director just before the pandemic was very interesting. And it probably reflects some of the things that are changing. And it was how people in like bigger cities, he was telling me about other funeral directors he knew in bigger cities, where they were, due to certain things like traffic, pressure at work, cost of time, essentially busyness, and habit, culture, how people were disconnecting and not physically going to the funeral anymore. And they were just literally leaving remembrance in or on essentially a web page and a portal. And that was their how they expressed their sorrow and their condolences as such. I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's great to have that digital book or book of evidence as such to show that people have sit down and perhaps taken time to write those words, think of a thoughtful memory of the person that's passed or how that person has impacted them. That's good. But there's something in the physical in going somewhere and getting ready and taking time off and asking your boss or telling your partner, children, or those around you, cancelling something simply because you got to go shake somebody's hand and mourn, or maybe somebody you don't even know, because maybe you knew the person who had passed away and no one else there knows you. I've been to funerals like that too. You just feel like you have to go. It's the right thing to do. And when I hear that story, I was like, that's sad. Like, that's very sad how in bigger cities that's happening. But in bigger cities generally, not always, but in general, the huge big things like that are life-changing events. And let's face it, death is life-changing. And more so than, well, is there anything else more life-changing? Marriage. But anyway, the fact is, when things like that start happening, like electronic things and means start replacing in-person interaction. And the beautiful thing about a funeral, I think, in many regards, is if you go and you don't know anybody there as such, and you just know the person who's passed away, I think that's, you're giving, and there's more than likely nobody that's there that knows you as such, you're giving your time, your energy, your love, your care to strangers in their most needy time. That's an amazing thing. And that's a great tradition, I believe, that should be kept. But if it's passed on through electronics, there's nothing wrong with having the book or the electronic book or the comments or the memories written down. That's great. But if it replaces the interaction, is that a good thing? Not great. I don't think it is. But it's shown the change. So if I was to project forward, and hopefully I don't die right now, but if I was to project forward, sometime after this video I will die, by the way. And I wonder why that thought got to me. And it got to me. It's like at different funerals, you're like, who would come? And how would they feel as well? How would they feel? And I think, not to get too deeply into it, but you, as a human being, should want as many people as possible to come, and that they would feel sorrowful, and that they would have loads of stories about you, and they would have loads of memories, and in some way you would have impacted their lives in some sort of positive way, even if it was only momentarily. I think for most people that's what it will be, momentarily having connections with people. But it's funny how when somebody dies that you think of those things. Oh gee, that time I met them, that was great, and we shared that moment, that laugh, that joke. This is a sign of how you get to know somebody truly, by sharing things, by sharing little jokes and happenings, moments that you'd love some others to be there with you, tweaks of just funny things that happened or weird things that happened. I remember meeting an old girlfriend, and we just bumped into each other. She was married at the time, and it was awkward, single, walking along, shopping mall, whatever, and we see each other from a distance, and we can't avoid each other. She's coming one way and going the other, and it's like a showdown of the OK Corral. You just can't do it. There's a lot of people around. It's awkward if you do, so you have to meet each other and speak momentarily at least. We did that, and look, whatever we spoke about was inconsequential. It just didn't matter. It was just catch up, how are you kind of stuff. A few moments passed, but you start thinking about those people in your relationships that at one stage mattered a huge amount to you. And would they come? Would they have any type of love for you in that regard? When I say love, I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm not talking about sexual love. I'm talking about appreciation love as a human being, having spent a segment of your time with you, having spent a period with you. Would they reflect differently because you're now gone, final? There's no way you can impact them positively or negatively. Would they find it in themselves to just section that off from their lives, that memory, as cruel and all as it could be to them at the time, even if you just did something consequential or pretty ordinary, if you were just a man, a guy, you were irritating them, you were annoying them just for being yourself? Or would they just not be able to do it? And if they weren't able to do it, would that be because it was too painful that you passed away? It was too painful that they didn't have the words or the time to say things to you? I guess if you put together all the people, relationship-wise, there'll be different reactions, or maybe there'll be just momentary memories, or maybe there'll be private conversations within from the people, and they won't go. They probably won't even sign something online or give a little story, anecdote. Why would they? After all, maybe if the relationship broke up in a bad way, they might feel as if it's not a good thing to do that maybe they should avoid that. They don't want others to read it or see it. And that brings me to thinking about what others think about you in relation to others. Are people staying away from funerals? Are people staying away from reflecting in a good way about your existence in this human world because of what others may think whilst they are still around and you are gone? That's pretty sad if there's people out there like that, and I'm sure there is. But it's all about closeness, the relationships that you've had. And then the question comes up to me. Yes, okay, say you've had those relationships and those relationships have been extremely beneficial at the time you had them. After all, if you had feelings and they had feelings, you spent great time together, why look back on it mostly with anger or frustration or annoyance? If you can get over it and get on with things and live your life, they have done the same, surely it should be pleasant memories in general. Okay, let's say we can do that many, many years later. Cool. But will you have been very close to them in the future? Like, for example, am I close? Does the person from the past, say 20 years ago, really know me now? can I, if I was to die right now, honestly say that if this is the end, and I look back over all the years, that person, those people, maybe there's different relationships, that they truly knew me, or did they just know a segment of me? And that segment, even though I was very, very open at that time with them, and even though I had wonderful times, and even though generally the relationship went well, that then they could say, yeah, I knew them better than the other partner, or the one 5 years time. Even though that partner spent a longer period with them, I knew them at a more intimate time, or a more pressurable time in their life, or a time where they had nothing, they needed something, and I gave it to them, or whatever. Or is it just that you, when you look back at that, you realise that, well, I was open to them, I was giving them my best, I had a great time. I only knew what I knew at the time. I only knew what I knew about myself at the time. And I only knew what I knew about relationships and how to treat somebody as best at that time. And now I know more. That there's a whole lot of learning happened and occurred in life since then. And therefore, because of that, that person, as close and all as we were, even with, say, I don't know, long marriage, partnership, a bit of both. There's people that have lived in each other's pockets and worked with each other as well. God knows how to do it. But can they say it in the same regard, that they know each other inside out? If in the future somebody passed away and they didn't feel as if, looking back the minute before they passed away, that one person that they spend most of the time with of their lives, most of their intimacies with, that person truly knew them. And I think there's something pretty sad about it all, if I'm being honest. I can remember back to, there's a line in a movie, now I'm not exactly sure the specific line, but I know it was the movie, The Notebook. I believe it was the first and opening scene, something to do with the main actor. Well, yeah, the main actor, when he was projected to be that bit older, in his 70s, 80s, and he was bringing his beloved, or visiting his beloved, I think, in a home of sorts, or a hospital setting. And he was saying something to do with like him being an ordinary guy, he hasn't done anything extraordinary in his life, but he has loved another. And it's a very extraordinary line, or concept as such, because most of us have ordinary lives, and we do ordinary things, and we're pretty much routine. But this guy had done this extraordinary thing where he had loved another, like truly and utterly loved another, truly and utterly honoured them, being loyal to them, and put in the time, dedicated himself without any type of wish to get something back, although he did, because he got the love back. And not to ruin or spoil the end of that movie, but there is a very loving end to it, I believe, where it's very much two people aligning their lives and ending their lives in the same and similar manner. But there is thought-provoking moments within that, not just that movie, but, and I always think, okay, movies are, yeah, they're made up and all of that. Most of them are, and that's pretty amazing. So why should we believe them? I mean, it's not real, unless it's a true story. I love a good true story. But if you look at the great movies, the ones that got loads of awards as such, Oscars and that, they're often made up. But then I think about it and I go, well, hang on a second, yeah, but who made them up? Human beings who either felt, be it in a short term or in their own private life, were seen as just ordinary individuals, writers that felt that way, or experienced, or both, or imagined. And either way, that's coming from in between our ears. It's coming from that special place, our brains. And from there, these people know that they have to produce a good written story. And if they do that, they can connect with others. People buy their popcorn, they buy their tickets to go to the movie house, and they want a very good, touching, connective story. And people often see themselves in characters of others and in the lines that people say. So in that regard, it's not that fake, it's more realistic, because it could happen. Nobody watches these great movies, especially the rom-coms, and thinks, oh my gosh, that's such crap. We always want to see the good person achieving with the other person. You want that happy ending. So there's something in us that we want that, which means there's something in us then that we want another to truly know ourselves, to truly get close. And there's a thing called unrequited love, of course, where you've got this I love them but they don't love me thing going on. But then there's this unconditional love, where they love you, they do not want anything else. There's nothing needed, required, wanted. In fact, a person just wants to give the love. And if they get anything back at all extra, it's a bonus. And I think that latter one is incredible. It's pure human love in many ways, and it shows how we are so unique in many ways. Well, in one way as such. But there's fears built up. And I have fears built up over the years. And a friend of mine once said to me how, when he was just out of a relationship, how he went through all the bits and bobs of the breakup. What she said and what he said, and how it ended. And it was pain, it was raw, and shocking for him, and we chatted as friends and that. And that's fine. That's what friends are for. That's cool. And I was single at the time as well, so it was something that was quite modern at the time and quite real, and something I needed to learn for myself. And I remember after he went through every specific action and word said, phrase said, conversation had, argument, whatever else that ended it for good, that he spoke about how after looking at what she said and putting a little bit of blame on her, he kind of gathered his thoughts and went, the thing is, I think I do have trust issues, referring to himself. I thought that was quite magnanimous of him to say that, to admit that quite possibly the fault, especially early on, when things were fresh breakup-wise, it was quite amazing for him to admit that there's a blame to be at his door as well as not just with her. Because there had, at this stage in his life, there had been a series of serious relationships which had basically ended at some stage before marriage. And I thought that was big of him to do that, to say that. That shows self-reflection to a degree. Maybe he was being a bit overcritical, but still, how many of us actually look at ourselves that early on, or if at all, if ever, and admit that we could possibly be at fault? Not everybody. That's the truth of it all. So, if that be the case, then what is the real disappointment when there's a breakup? That you're alone, because that is the result of the action of breaking up. You're alone. There is just you. At the end of it all, yes, you can have your friend who's of the same sex or gender as you, but you guys cry, drink wine, ice cream, do whatever. Spend time with each other, quality time. Even bring in the partner of the same sex as your ex-partner to have a girls do this, she shouldn't have said that, she was like something else, not such a nice person, whatever, and you're right and they're wrong. But at the end of it all, when you become alone again and you have time to yourself, be that moment before going to sleep or waking up, you realize that There had to be something you said or did, your behavior, your treatment of that other person. And if you have a series of breakups and relationships, and eventually you are alone, then what happens is, time passes. You realize, wow, time has passed. As I invested into that, and it got deeper and it got longer. We've had 2 years. She's gone now. But my 2 years is gone now as well. That's the thing. And they are 2 years you'll never ever get back. And so you get over things and you wait a while, spend some time alone, try and lick your wounds, whatever. Another year, 2 years pass with someone else, and then it's 5 years. Holy smokes, 5 years of your life. Did you learn anything? Well, yeah, you had good times, but you had a broken heart a couple of times, and that's not good. Or is it? I don't think so. Especially if it leads to self-doubt. And then, for going back to my friend's reflection on things, how he was so brave to admit to me, as a guy even, how he felt that way and that he could do better with regard to things. And he had to work on his trust issues from previous relationships or friendships, whatever else. If you're stopping yourself from getting close to others, how can you blame others then? If you're genuinely out and about, you're genuinely trying to be a good person, being open, being friendly, flirty, interested, all these great things, surely then you're ready for this sharing of allowing someone else to know you and truly know you. And maybe then, when you go a little bit later on in life, middle age plus, when that happens, note thyself, note others with thyself, that you'll be able to be accountable within the relationship, because this is it. There ain't much else changing in your life, because most people live ordinary lives. If you take away the cameras, if you take away the media wanting information from you, or wanting you to be the one that says the information, if you take away all the shock and the horror and the headlines, everybody is just ordinary. Everybody is just a human. And we are, if you strip away it all, we are there to be together. We are there to... Author David Brooks, in his excellent research and most recent research, said that to truly know someone, you need to know that relationships matter, in that you need to respect relationships per se, and that relational struggles are going to happen. They're going to occur between people. There has to be deep attention as well as genuine curiosity. And two people, they need to actively listen and realize humble presence is important too. With all of that combined, you need to have empathy and to practice it regularly, and to have intentional connection, and realizing that you and the other should have personal growth. We are there to connect in the deepest way possible. But then, let's say that's positive. This is where some of the fears come in. And you're deep, like going into the ocean, deep with another. You're in it together. You do everything together, or you do one thing together, even as just sharing a bed or rearing a child. Just, says I. There's some big things for years on end. But there's this concept of exclusiveness, that you are with this other person. That's what a wedding ring is. It's showing that you're physically off the market. Look at me here. Look, I've got a ring on. So is she. She's near me. She's with me. She's thinking the same thing. Woo, look at my engagement ring. This is like glittering I don't know, whatever gems they put on them nowadays. So they're signs basically. It's like a stop sign. Don't come near me, don't think about it that way, don't flirt with me, because I ain't for you. That's fine. That's a nice social indicator of I want my man or my woman, and I don't want you in that way. Right, so be it. But if you go deep with one, does that exclusively mean you can't go deep with another? I mean that if we're meant to connect, surely then we're meant to connect deeply with everybody. With the prince and the pauper, and maybe that's a princess also. Now, the concept then of polygamy or monogamy, all the agonies of marrying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or being with others in that way, then becomes plausible. Because if we answer this question of wanting to be and admitting that I, as a human, even a man that's middle-aged, want that closeness, that to share, to be exclusively open with a person, and say to them, look, yes indeed, you're here to share and be open and to be truly known. Well, if that be the case, can we not be truly known by others? Should we not be totally and utterly open with others? Now, maybe there's a whole concept out there about sexuality, about sex and sharing partners and all that kind of stuff. But what about the fact that, it's not a fact, but what about the idea of being open with others? The true you. That if, let's say, take my friend as the example again, at that point where he felt totally untrustworthy towards any prospective female partner, and he knew he had to work on himself. Let's say that at that point then he realized that and did work, and then became open and trustworthy, and he meets this lovely girl, which he did, by the way, eventually. But let's say he met this lovely girl, and him being aware of him having to do that work previously, after the previous relationship, because the previous relationship had made him aware of this lack of trust that he had. And maybe in fairness that his previous girlfriend felt that that was the reason why he wasn't a good suitor in the long term. Maybe she didn't even say it to him, but she felt it. Maybe he felt she felt it. So he did the work, and he feels good about himself, and he's with this new girl, and he's now open, and he's trusting, and he's with her, and they're exclusive, and they're talking about it together, and there's trust, and it's like he's feeling amazing about it all. And because of that loving relationship, because of that trust, because he's earned it, because this new girl has answered his call and she feels the same way. Maybe the trust from her relationship issues in the past, she had to do her own little self-work as well. Not belittling by saying little, but she's just a subplot here really in the story. But apologies to any lady out there maybe watching. Let's say because of that, then this guy realizes that, okay, I have to now share this trust, share the good feeling. I feel inspired. This woman has made me feel inspired. I feel incredible. So let's go with that thought process. Let's go with that flow. Surely then that's a good thing, because he then has been inspired and will inspire others. Sharing the love, sharing the trust. And disregarding the sexuality or gender piece or anything like that, if it's not physical, surely then that is giving a flow to the world around him at least, where he is acknowledging that others need a pick-me-up, others need a type of inspiration, and that all he is a conduit. He's not the guy that is inspired, or he's inspired, but he's not inspiring really. He's just the one that's allowing his human form to carry on this inspiration. It is the woman he loves that has given him unconditional love in the first place. And if that be the case, sure, that's a wonderful thing. That means then that a man like myself, working on my trust issues because of previous relationship issues or breakups, comes to a certain time and age, realizes that they're stunted in some ways in their lives, that maybe they have reached the capacity of their abilities, work or economics or other areas, or things won't change in certain ways. And they realize they're aging. And from there, their one thing is that the relationship with females. And then they realize that it's a trust issue. And it's a trust issue on their part, and that they can fix it or get some help. And then they figure it out. When they do, they enter into a future relationship, and it inspires them. They think this person should be put on a pedestal for being with them, putting up with them, for trusting them, for opening them. And then they share that great feeling about it. I think that's cool. Problem is then, of course, heartbreak, because people eventually die. If he dies before her, then we're back to the funeral business. And then he's wondering about his legacy. If that be the case, or even if he does end up with that lovely, inspirational other, and his whole life is spent with them, 20, 30, 40 years pass, and eventually kicks the bucket, well then, even the time or the days or the weeks before he does that and he feels weaker, he feels he hasn't long left, then surely then at that stage he has to realize, why have I been here? I got close to somebody, they inspired me, I tried to do my best around that for others too, but why have I been here? What was the whole purpose of it all? So I followed the good words, the good feeling, this love, this inspiration, this closeness. I've shared myself. And I spent all the time in the world with this person. And yet, here we are, I'm dying. Who will come to my funeral? That's a practical question you then ask yourself. And you'd be kind of wondering, wouldn't you? And what would they say about you? And why does it matter? Why do you even have to have a funeral? After all, you've already been belonged to another. Is that not enough for one human being? But then when I think of away from intimate relationships and more towards the practical, everyday, day in, day out routines that we all follow. The getting up as a child, going to school, sitting at a table, being put next to another child that you've never seen before, you don't know. And then before you know it, you're chatting, you're socializing, you're spending time outside of school together, you have a group together, other friends. A couple of years pass, and suddenly you're into another school, you're bigger, similar things happen, or maybe from the previous school, someone else comes along, sits beside you, you become a teenager together, adolescence, you grow up, you socialize externally, you become independent of mom and dad. In some ways, you end up leaving school, maturing, adulthood, loads of energy, loads of hormones, young person, get out there and about, copulate, relationships, friendships, workplace. And you start thinking back, even now, who have I been very close to that really knows me? Is there any one person that would know me right now? Like even right now, this moment I'm recording, this video is not going to be put out there in a minute's time. So the very next person I meet after this recording, whether they know I've recorded or not, doesn't really matter, but the very next person has the capacity to change me through something they say, through their behavior, through an action. I have, as a person, capacity to be distracted. You could walk up the street right after this and be very happy with the recording, and then momentary, boom, car crash, boom, something else happens in front of me which distracts me, which brings me on a whole train of thought, which is shocking to me, which leaves me with a whole new set of thoughts, which then interacts with my preconceived thinking. And as a result, I change as a human. And as a result of that, I start wondering and imagining, and I start thinking about reflecting in my life later down the track, if I be so lucky to be alive at a certain time and age. And then you kind of interact differently with people because of incidents in your life, experiences and behaviors and interactions with others. And so even after this recording, that you put it out there, you hope you connect with somebody in a good way, that you can just realize that your thoughts are gone, they're changed. And so therefore, the people that you're thinking about now that you'd like to be at your funeral or your last days or something, and say, oh, they were a nice person, they were a good person, they did something good for me. And the reason being is because essentially you respect them. Essentially, they're not famous people, not celebrities or anything like that, not even people that you needed something from, but you respect them. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to. And you spent time with them in a moment. That was just magic. And you'd like them to felt the same way. I'm not even talking so deeply as love or fancy or flirting or anything like that. It could be that, but it could be just a friendship. It could be just an interaction. It could be just a work colleague. And when we think of all of those hours, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, if you're so lucky and you get 2 or 3 off, it's in around the 50 mark. That's a lot of time. And generally people don't spend that. I certainly haven't, with a potential relationship person, or it could be enriched, or essentially it forces a breakup. You spend too much time together. But that means I spent a lot of time with others and had a lot of work with others. And in that vein, what happens then is, what's happened to me is that we've interacted, we've had pressurable moments where, gosh, I can think of so many, where it was so important that as humans we clicked. We just had to have this forced chemistry, say, to help another or to do the right thing at the right time. If only for me or them or both of us, realizing that, oopsie doopsie, I got to do this right now, and if I don't, I'll be in trouble with my boss or this person, or I might lose my job or whatever else. But of course, things should be deeper than that for your job, and we'll get to that another time. But if you've had connections with people in that regard, momentary connections, or if you spend time with somebody, a couple of months, I remember working with people so physically close to me, people that were just random strangers 5 minutes before, and then suddenly I'm sitting beside them, and I'm with them for weeks, months, and even years on end, as close as human interaction can be, multiplied by hours. Now, if we stop and think about that for a second, we are influenced so much by one person in work, and they mightn't be in any way compatible with us as a human being. We might have most things not in common, never will, and yet we are pressurized or under the insistence of our bosses to spend all that time together. And years can pass and have passed, and it's impossible, if only subconsciously, to not be influenced by this person, by simple things. Could be their views, could be their opinions, could be their voice, could be their smells, scent, stories, the fact that the company or the job or the team needed to spend more time together. And that can be positive for work, but it can be detrimental to you as a person, to your development, to your overall thinking, your version of the world, your way of living your life. And there's no switch we can have when we go at the end of work. We just press the switch and not think about what they've said or smelt or done, or things they've worn, like their clothes, or the message that they've delivered on a given day or throughout their lives. And then if that person changes, or they change their views, or they have a huge interaction, a huge experience in life, their behavior changes, well then it becomes a thing where it's potentially going to change you. And then whatever you've built up, maybe you do actually find them very positive and inspirational in your life. Maybe you do get close to them. Maybe that's the person that does really and truly know you, and you didn't realize it, but you were sharing all of these aspects of your life with them, and they actually listened. Maybe there was no attraction. It was just simply they were passing time with a good person that they realized they weren't forced to be beside. And then they build up this picture of you, but you don't know that you've shared in that way. Or maybe you don't think about them with regard to their stories or their life in the same way. Because, going back to the word exclusive, there's not even friendship there. There's just professional interaction, an ongoing professional interaction. So maybe if we look at and multiply out all those hours, 50 up to 50 weeks a year, you have that with people, undeniable influence that you're receiving or getting. To think that you haven't come close to at least one person, say, in a given year, if you say are a single person, and we then are human beings who essentially are meant to connect, well then, even over a year, not to mention 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, that is absolutely scary. I remember one guy, potential client, and he said to me, I'm in my man cave. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be with anybody. I go to work, I come home, and I stay in my cave. I said, you're in an actual physical cave? And he said, no, I'm not in a physical cave. He said, I'm in a house, my little 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, whatever it is. I have no children. I've had many relationships. Female, the last one, she just did a job on me, and I never want to talk about it again. And I have no interest in women, I have no interest in this, that, and the other. But I'm in my cave because it's dark, and that's where I want to be. And I don't want to get out of it. And boy, oh boy, that is a place to be gloomy, because I didn't see this physical place this guy was living in. But I realized that this guy was really stuck, and he was in limbo, and he didn't know what to do. But his insistence on being alone was in a negative fashion, a dark fashion, was not good. And I believe beyond it all that if somebody's truly going to get to know me or you, we need to allow them in. We need to trust, we need to work on things like that within ourselves and give the next person a chance. Learn from the past, and then from there we can hopefully get reciprocal respect.
Thanks for watching. Please like this video. If you subscribe, comment to say that you have, and we'll look after you.